Ornithology.
What a fine achievement for Cheltenham Town.
Hi there, welcome to episode 5 of Ornithology, a Robins Trust podcast. My name's Jamie, I'm a member of the Robins Trust board. I set this podcast up to take a look under the hood of the football club and just understand how the parts fit together and the people involved. If you're a member of the Robins Trust, you will automatically get access to this podcast. If you're not a member of the Robins Trust yet, you can become a member for £10 a year. Or if you'd like to support us and our aims even further, you can become an investor, which is from £5 a month upwards. Thank you to everyone who is a member and has listened to this podcast and just given me feedback so far. I'm really glad that it is, as one of the other board members says, scratching an itch. That's good to know. This is episode 5, and this month's guest is John Duffy. John is the stadium manager and ground safety officer at the club, very much responsible for keeping us all safe at home matches and making sure that the physical infrastructure of the club is set up right and is going to pass all the certification that it needs. He's responsible for ensuring that the bars adhere to all the laws required. So we get into that a little bit, when people are allowed to get drinks at half-time when the bar serves. And we also cover a little bit about the removal of bottle tops and how the stewarding works. It's something that's been raised a bit on social media about whether the stewards are less aggressively enforcing the rules with away fans than they are with home fans. Whaddon Road, the complete Suzuki Stadium, present some quite unique challenges when it comes to the stewarding. It's very interesting to hear what he has to say about it, about the club's approach to enforcing the rules. Great to speak to John about how a match is put on every time. So here is John Duffy. It's one of the ways that a lot of supporters come into contact with the club and the staff of the club. And it's quite a big logistical thing to be organising an event for 3,000-4,000 people every couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of planning and preparation that goes into it that probably a lot of people don't appreciate, don't need to know, why would they? But there is a lot of, it's not just a case of turning up in the turnstiles and letting everyone in. There's an awful lot of stuff that goes into it because there is a lot of rules and regulations. We have a safety certificate of the local authority. We have a licence to admit spectators off the sports ground safety authority. So there's a lot of things a lot of hoops we have to jump through to be able to do that. And it's a constant, as soon as one game ends, we start planning for the next one.
So I think that's a good opportunity then to sort of go through that. So you finished off one game, there's another home fixture coming up. What are the sort of steps that you need to take?
There's various really, right? We liaise with the police. That's predominantly around who the visiting team is and how many they bring in, and is there a risk element, and have they behaved badly previously. We'll do a risk assessment. That'll look at things like how many tickets they've sold, what happened last time they came, if they've been before, if they haven't, how they behaved elsewhere, drink, drugs, pyros, missiles, the usual football type stuff you can imagine. So liaison with the police in terms of preparing for visiting supporters. And then the rest is really around making sure, obviously, that the stadium is safe to admit people. So we do all sorts of inspections and servicing and checks and maintenance, and that's everything from literally the turnstiles, are they turning properly, do they need oiling, to the big safety stuff like the PA system, the CCTV system, the safety barriers and stuff like that. There's a massive list. Won't go through them all to bore you, but so we have to do a formal checklist before every game, and we do that 48 hours out, and then we do it again on the morning of the match or the afternoon if it's an evening kick-off. We try and make sure that everywhere's been cleaned. That's sort of an ongoing battle, really. So, yeah, there's a whole heap of things we have to do. And then we prepare briefings for the referee, briefings for the stewards. And that will include stuff from the weather forecast and ticket sales, anything going on, not necessarily football related, that might impact what we do. Like, for instance, the Israel-Gaza thing at the minute and flags appearing, and how do we handle that? Probably won't be an issue at Cheltenham, but we have to plan and prepare just in case that kind of thing comes up. So there is a lot that goes into it, just to make sure. Because my overriding job, it's not in the job description. My overriding job is to make sure that everyone who comes to the stadium on a match day goes home safely. Simple as that. And if that happens, we've done our job. There might be lots of little things that need improving, but if everyone goes home safely, supporters, players, officials, staff, then we're happy.
And who is the team that you work with? How many other people are there?
Really lucky. I joined Cheltenham almost a year ago to the day, and I'm really lucky that I joined a really good team. So Nick, who many people know, he's been at the club for, I think, since the non-league days. He's my deputy safety officer. He's absolutely brilliant, very supportive, very knowledgeable, particularly about Cheltenham as he's been there such a long time. Paul is our number 3, if you like. He does the CCTV and the logging of incidents. And then we've got stand managers, one for each of the 4 stands, deputy stand managers, and then the stewarding team. And we also contract in some agency staff, particularly SIA licensed security staff around the bars and the searching and that kind of thing. So it's quite a big team. Like your average home game, there'll be 50 plus of the safety team working. And then that'll go up to sort of mid-60s if it's a derby and they've sold out, or a local rival, Bristol, Forest Green, etc. So, different levels of the staffing, but it'll generally be from 50 up to mid-60s. But I'm really lucky. Of everyone I've come across, I have to say, I work in other sports. I've worked at other football clubs. I would put the Cheltenham team up against anyone I've come across. Very, very lucky.
I mean, this is a slight tangent because it's quite subjective, but would you say that the fan base at Cheltenham is, you might expect less trouble maybe than from other places? And I appreciate that there's always going to be young lads who are quite, and it is lads generally, who are quite sort of fired up. But I think there was a safety report not that long ago, I think it was for a season ago, that said that there were no active banning orders in place for Cheltenham. Unfortunately, with the Bristol Rovers incident...
The Bristol incident has made a peak of that. But
that might change. But
if you put that to one side, I think the fan base is pretty good, to be honest, mate. Even the Block 1, I think they style themselves as, or the singing section. I've spoken to people from there. Tyler, I think, is one guy who springs to mind. They're nice kids, do you know what I mean? They're all right. They just want to create atmosphere. They want to have some fun when they're at the match. And you can't knock that, to be honest. We've not really, in terms of home fans, we've not encountered, there's always an exception, of course. There's someone in court quite soon for some pretty serious discrimination, actually, against Birmingham when they were here. So that there's always an exception, but in general terms, the fan base is good.
So on that side of things, and I appreciate that the police might be involved, but if there is an incident within the crowd, what's the process for once a steward's been informed, what are the steps that happen?
So we normally will get cameras on the incidents. We've got a really good CCTV system in the ground. We can zoom in facial features like you're looking at me now. So we've got great CCTV. So we'll normally zoom in on the incident, and then we'll try and get actual evidence of it rather than just I heard, or we've got the reporting line there. Supporters can, if they see something around them or hear something around them, they can discreetly contact the control room directly, and we can put cameras on and try and get actual evidence. And then we'll liaise with the police, because it is a zero tolerance thing, which I think everyone would agree is right. I know people get excited when they go in the ground, almost change personality a little bit when you go through the turnstile. I'm a football fan, so I'm guilty of that as well. But in terms of really serious stuff like discrimination, antisocial behaviour, that violence, certainly that kind of thing, it's zero tolerance, and our procedure is to get cameras on, get evidence, and then deal with the people. And that won't generally be sometimes that'll be just getting them out of the ground. But we've got really brilliant working relationship with Gloucestershire Constabulary, the dedicated football officer. Many of the supporters will know Tufty. He's brilliant, and he's so supportive of the club. And to be fair, we're supportive of the stuff that they do as well. So it's working collaboratively, I think, with the authorities and the agencies to try and stamp this out, because we want a great atmosphere at the ground, but we don't want anything like that. We don't want anything offensive, discriminatory, homophobic. Go through the whole list. We just don't want it. Simple as that. Working
with the police, in terms of things like scheduling fixtures and stuff, I know famously we never have the 1st of January home match and things like that, but there will be other times where there's other events on. When it comes to planning the fixture list, and obviously this is going to be done with the EFL at the start of the season, are you involved in talking to the police about that?
Not really, no. That tends to be something at the football ops side. So Paul Godfrey, the director, is again a really excellent person to work with, very knowledgeable and experienced. He'll be more focused on that, and he's been here a long time, so he knows what's good and what's not. So we won't generally play it at home at the same time as Forest Green. I think there was an incident recently where that did happen, but it wasn't a league match. It was an EFL trophy or something like that. So we generally won't play at home on the same day or time as they do. I think that's probably the only major thing for for fixtures. I think you're right on New Year's Day, but although we're home on Boxing Day, I think, and then on the 29th as well this year. So still plenty going on over the festive period. But I think Forest Green not being at home at the same time is the main, possibly the only real one, given the locality and who's around us and what's around us.
In terms of the winter coming up, talking about those fixtures, when there are postponements, I know in recent years it feels like there's been more postponements due to ice around the ground rather than the state of the pitch. So how does this is maybe slightly banal, but I'm just interested, like how does the checking of the sort of the environment around the game work? And at what point are there sort of milestones for deciding?
So we obviously monitoring the weather is one of the big things I do in terms of what's coming up and how it might affect a fixture. So certainly last year we lost a game to ice, but that was because of the pitch rather than the environment, because we had lots of volunteers come in to clear the car park. I think the directors got some pizza in for them, so that was good. But ultimately, even if the pitch was great, those pre-match checks we do include the surrounding area. We call it Zone X in the safety industry. So it's stuff that's not necessarily the clubs, but it affects the club. So if Whaddon Road itself, for instance, was treacherous, even if our car park and the ground were fine, we might have to make the call to say we're going to postpone the game because we don't want supporters falling all over Whaddon Road or Presby Road, etc. So that can happen. That's Zone X considerations. Going back to the events, the same thing would happen. So Forest Green might not be at home, but we'll obviously avoid major race meetings as well. So we can't play at home midweek when the Cheltenham Festival's on. So again, that's not directly, but it's something we consider.
Do things like that affect the agency staff available as well?
That's one of the reasons we can't, because certainly the agency staff that we use, they also work at Forest Green. So if we were to both be at home, there'd be a bit of an issue on who gets what. We have got an agreement in place with them for a minimum staffing if that was to ever happen. And I say it did happen on a minor fixture. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would be more challenging than normal.
We've talked previously, I mean, the first thing I got in touch with you about was the sale of alcohol in the ground and what the rules were around that. How, just in a really practical sense, how is that communicated and how decisions made on when timing is? The
law states football specifically, you can't drink alcohol in view of the pitch. So we have to be careful about where it's sold and when it's sold. We've tried, and we have rejigged things at the back of the Optimising IT stand. It used to be penned in by the bar, basically by barriers. We've opened all that up and we've put a couple of screens in front of the access doors. I think that's gone down fairly well.
I haven't heard anything negative. People seem to see that as quite a positive solution.
We're trying to give more freedom without obviously breaking any rules or regulations, if I can put it like that. Open bars like that, we generally stop serving as soon as the whistle goes, just because we have to redeploy staff when the whistle goes to look after the spectators inside. So if we were to leave the bar open there, that specific location throughout the game, I think you'll potentially get more instances of people wandering in with a pint in their hand. Not necessarily because they want to break the rules, but it's one of those things, isn't it? They can do it at a rugby ground, you can do it at a cricket ground, you just can't do it at a football match. But the sports bar in the Colin Farmer stand, for instance, that stays open a little bit longer because it's inside, because you'd have to go through physical doors to take your pint in. We leave that one open a little bit longer. So we're trying to be flexible. Also, we've got a new bars and catering partner, so of course he wants to make some money out of it. So we're trying to help him and give supporters more access without falling foul of any laws or regulations. I think that's the best way to put it.
And another thing that's come up with supporters is and this could be entirely an issue of perception, but an idea that the stewarding of away fans in terms of encroachment on the pitch has occasionally been a lot lighter handed than they feel home fans are treated to. I'm trying to think, there's a couple of specific matches that people, and I wasn't in person at the games where this happened.
Hopefully it was before my time.
I can't remember exactly, but it's certainly not this season, at least.
My first game, actually, believe it or not, was the Alf Church Cup tie.
Cool.
So it was a baptism of fire for me. We had no knowledge about their support. We had no information from their police because most of the time they're just a few hundred people, I guess. But they had Birmingham fans there that day, Aston Villa fans, as well as their own fans. They did a mass pitch incursion, including...
Do you think this might be one of the games that I'm thinking about?
We saw people lifting their kids over onto the pitch. It's just amazing. And I think in that particular incident, it was because they're not used to playing at league grounds. They're very much a non-league team. It was a big result for them. We have a procedure in place for this. So if one person or one or two people run on, we'll go and tackle them. But if it's a numbers thing where a lot of people have come on, we switch initially to just trying to keep them apart from home supporters. So we won't initially start shoving people off. We'll try and contain it. We'll go a line across the pitch and then we'll gradually push them back. So I understand where the perception comes from, but it's just dealing with things in a slightly different way depending on how many people may have got on the pitch. And pitch incursions can be a particular problem at Cheltenham because of that one side of the ground where there's no barriers. You literally walk out your seat straight onto the pitch. It's quite unique in Football League. So that can be a bit challenging. So when the away fans sell out and go around the corner into the Colin Farmer, that block 6 to 8 of that section where it's so difficult if they want to is something we try and manage, but it's difficult. It's a challenging one. But no, certainly no intent to manage home or away pitch encroachment differently, but I understand where the perception might come from.
So that's a useful context about, I mean, it's situation specific, so I think that's very useful to hear.
Yeah, so one or two or even a few, we try and go and get them off, specifically get them off, get them out, get them arrested if we can. It's illegal. If you've got hundreds coming on, and in the case of Alvechurch, it was kids, and I saw someone tried to get on in like a mobility scooter. We have to handle things slightly differently then. But no, there's certainly no intent to handle it differently. We'll try and be robust because it is illegal and we don't want players or officials feeling intimidated. Even if the nature of the encroachment is celebratory, it can still be a bit hairy, scary. With lots of
for the players, I mean, they're in their place of work and there have been in very recent history incidents of players being assaulted.
Absolutely, there have been, yeah. And we as a club can get fined when people come on the pitch or throw things on the pitch or there's a pyro. We can get fined, and a 20,000 picked out. Yeah, I'm not sure we've had one, but if there was a 20, it's quite significant for the club, and that stops us doing other things like improving the ground or improving the playing squad and stuff like that. Ultimately. Okay,
so that's useful to talk about as well then. So there's very, 5-figure fines for things like pyros.
No, absolutely. We can, if the referee reports an incident, then we'll get a letter from the FA asking us to explain, and ultimately that can end up in a fine. So we have to show that we did everything we could to prepare and plan, and that's going back again to all the match preparation and risk assessments and who's, is there any intelligence around stuff? We have to show that we did everything to plan and prepare and mitigate, so that hopefully, even if things do happen, we can show that we did everything reasonably practicable to prevent that, and that might avoid us getting the fine. But ultimately, it can cost the club a lot of money, which nobody wants, to be fair.
Yeah, not at all. When there are fan protests, I think we're very lucky that we're in a position where we don't feel that the club is at risk from the ownership, unlike some other clubs. So I think it was even this weekend, Reading fans did the tennis balls on the pitch thing again. So that does incur a financial cost.
Absolutely, yeah, that can have significant impact upon the club, which ultimately won't help what the supporters are probably protesting against. But again, I understand. You pay your money, you got a right to voice your opinion.
It would be nice for us never to get in a position where...
Touch wood. I am touching wood as we speak.
That's a useful way of looking at things. I mean, if someone... I've seen this, I would say, more at away matches.
Yeah.
But, someone who's young and getting very boisterous and giving it the big one, being walked out by the stewards... Mm. Would they, I mean, I guess, again, this depends on the context, but if it's just that they're being kind of unruly, do they get left outside to wait for their mates to just come and join them afterwards? Or do they get slammed with a sort of banning order, or, would they get prosecuted?
It really does depend on the circumstances. We'll very rarely just cart someone out straight away. We'll always try and speak to them and say, calm down, or don't vape there. Don't smoke there. You can't smoke there. So we'll generally try and speak to people first. If it's really serious or they're repeating the same thing, then ultimately we will eject them. That's normally as far as it goes. They won't, unless there's discrimination or violence. The police may speak to them. They may take a note of their details, but only if it's very serious will they look to arrest them and take action against them, like football banning orders. We can do a club ban. So if someone, I don't know, I think there's an incident at the end of last season where someone ran on from the Colin Farmer after the match, and we spoke to them. I think we banned them for one match, a club ban, and then asked them to sign what's called an APC, an acceptable behaviour contract with us before they came back. That's we don't want fans going to court and losing their right to follow their team. Well, obviously, if they behave in certain ways, then they should expect that. But if it's like you described, someone's a bit boisterous, that maybe lost their head in a moment of madness, then we won't. We'll speak to them, we'll engage with them, we'll tell them why it was wrong. I wasn't at a game recently, but Nick had a couple of kids for a quid game. A couple of kids run on and do a knee slide on the pitch at the end of the match, and obviously the referee put it in his report. So again, we got that letter, having to explain ourselves. But Nick spoke to the kids and their parents in the control room, in a sort of stern headmaster type way, and they're very apologetic, and it was learning for them as well. So that we try and do education and engagement first and foremost, and the banning stuff is always his last resort, really.
With the Colin Farmer, because I shouldn't assume that this is the only place that people can get onto the pitch, but that must be a big thing in the risk assessment because there is no hoarding there. Is that because just pitch dimensions and there's no space for it?
It's just the dimensions. It's really close. We haven't got enough space there to do the barriers that you'd see in the other parts of the ground or in most grounds that you go to. It's just purely dimensions. That's all it is. And it does create a challenge. But to be fair, most of the people, block one will run down occasionally. They'll run on. They don't come onto the pitch. From the referee's point of view, and we've had this before, I think, where they think they're on the pitch. They're actually not. And again, when we've been written to, we've explained, look, they ran down, they're on the side of the pitch, there's no barrier, but they weren't on the pitch. They're generally, they're generally pretty good. They know the limits. They know where they can and can't go. And if they get a bit overexcited and come on by a few feet or millimetres, the same stewards work in that area, so they'll know each other and they'll just usher them back. Again, we won't look to necessarily chuck people out if they've just come on by a couple of feet. But it can get the club in trouble. It's just a freak of the confines of the ground, really, the space that we have to work in.
Regarding all this sort of compliance and certification that you need with the FA, the EFL and the council, sort of assume that quite a lot of that is actually processed by Paul Godfrey, perhaps, as the football secretary.
Paul does. So Paul will do all the football up stuff, and I work closely with Paul on the compliance stuff in terms of our applications for safety certificate and for licence from the SGSE. So that's something I would work hand in hand with Paul. And again, that's about our risk assessments, our record keeping, our checks and inspections and maintenance and servicing and testing. It's a whole load of stuff that goes into it. Indeed, the last home match, Cambridge, we had the Sports Ground Safety Authority inspectors and the local authority with us on that day. So some supporters may have seen people walking around, with checklists, or talking to stewards and observing, standing in block one, and they were both at the ground. So we have inspections, live inspections as well.
How often is that?
They come at least once a year. They'll often come more than once a year. So we'll see them again this season for sure.
And do they just turn up in the morning? Or
no, we do get notice. We do get notice, although we'd like to think if it was on spec, we'd be equally prepared. But of course, if you know they're coming, you can dust yourselves down a bit more, etc. But and again, to be fair to both the local authority and the Sports Ground Safety Authority and the police and the fire service, we work really well with them. So there's nothing antagonistic. They're there. We all want the same thing at the end of the day, which is just a safe and enjoyable match day. That's basically it. We all want the same thing.
And if people have issues, I guess in terms of behaviour and things, it's obvious that they speak to a steward and then see what can be done. But if they have issues with facilities or the toilet, something like that, or there's a load of rubbish somewhere, what should they do? What would you tell supporters to do in the first instance?
They should definitely contact the club. It's always best to do it in writing via email because that gives us then a paper trail to follow. And if people email me about, and I do get emails about all sorts, I'll always respond. I'll always respond quickly as well. I would encourage people to speak to us about stuff like that because a lot of the time we'll sort of bob along thinking everything's tickety-boo, and unless someone tells us otherwise, we won't really look into it. We know some of the toilets at the ground could do with refurbishing, and the maintenance is an ongoing thing, so we'll clean, we'll tidy, we'll give a lick of paint. We know there's longer-term things to tackle, but we would encourage people actually to contact us and say, toilets, particularly bad, or why is there always litter next to where I stand? Because it might just be a case that the cleaners, who again are good people, it might just be a case that they're missing, particularly around for some reason. So we'd encourage it. I think my email's on the website. They can email me about any issue. It doesn't have to be safety related. It can be facilities related, compliance related, supporter experience. And if it's not for me, I'll always pass it on to whoever it relates to, and other people at the club, if they get stuff from me, will always pass it on to me. So, no, I'd encourage it, to be honest, Jamie, because as I said, it's often the only way we really find out. And we've got a different perspective on the match day up in the control tower or looking on CCTV. We're not necessarily experiencing it in the same way as supporters do. So it's important we get their perspective.
We're going to put another shout out in, I don't know how the international break is going to fall, but maybe in the summer, about getting a sort of work group together if people want to come and help just tidy things.
We did it in a very small way a few weeks ago. Jenny was there. There was a chap called Robin. He did a great job on the painting the toilet blocks in the paddock.
Yes.
And I did not as good a job painting one of the walls behind the dugout. So, but it's a start. Okay, 3 people that day, 6 next time, 12 the time after that. It all helps. Obviously, it'd be great if the club just had endless amounts of money and could employ contractors and everything was, shiny and brand new and up to date. But that's not the case. So supporting involvement, volunteering that way is fantastic for me because it allows me to check some stuff off that otherwise I might have to wait a season for or 2 seasons for because we have priorities. It's always gratefully received.
Is there anything else that you wanted to just make fans aware of? Or?
I've seen a couple of things. There's 2 things really. Bottle tops, I think, was an issue recently, so I thought I should just quickly talk through that. And that's purely from a missile point of view. So bottles are much less effective when thrown if there's no lid on them. If it's empty, it doesn't really do anything. And if there's stuff in it, liquids of some sort, you'd probably get as much over yourself as you would anyone else if you're throwing it. Okay,
so that's the actual rationale. That's interesting because I've read elsewhere that it's due to them being a trip hazard on steps if they've got the lid on because a bottle will crush under your foot.
Right, that's an interesting one, but that's not the reasoning behind why we do it. So our rationale is for missiles. And I have to say, and I hopefully know what away supporters will come across this, I think, I'll check with our catering provider, Heath, another good guy. I think it is now, or should be now, really only heavily enforced in the away end. Supporters will obviously tell me if it's different, if that's not the case. But certainly our advice to the caterer was, look, in terms of the bottle tops, be strict on it in the away end. We're not too fussed elsewhere. Because there is no, to my knowledge, there's no great history of people in the home section throwing bottles at the referee or anything like that. So we'd be inconveniencing people to prevent a problem that doesn't exist. But that's the rationale of the club is for missile purposes. But the trip hazard's an interesting one. I'm glad you raised that.
I think people were debating the two, which was the more important one. Because I think they said people were suggesting that at concerts and stuff, at venues for music and things, that's the reason that they do it.
Right, that's interesting.
You said there were a couple of things.
Flags, particularly flag poles. So we were talking, I mentioned Tyler before from Block 1, and we've been going back and forth on flags because obviously they're trying to generate more of an atmosphere. Some of the things they want to do, unfortunately, fall afoul of the ground regs, and that's the ground regs come from the Football League. They're not Cheltenham Town ground regs. They're Football League ground regs, and that says you can't bring a flagpole in. We're trying to get around that, working with Tyler to say that they can have flags on poles, but they've got to leave them at the ground, and then we'll hand them out for them to wave before the match, and then we'll store them away again. Sort of thing you see at like the grounds, you'll see them handing out all the big flags at the front of us to waved, and then when the kick-off comes, they get stowed away again. So we're potentially looking at something like that. But I think it's important for sports to understand that the ground regs we get from the Football League, every Football League club gets the same ground regs. It's not us saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. We're just complying with the ground regs. But we will always work with supporters, and that's an example of it, to try and accommodate things safely without breaching any regulation.
Sounds very reasonable, and the club are trying to be accommodating.
Definitely, we want an atmosphere. It's just things like the flagpoles, but that would be similar to what we do with the drum. So they have the drum, but it stays at the ground, so they don't bring it in. And the big flags, if they have big flags, with 6-foot poles, then obviously we can accommodate it by them staying at the ground. Stewards hand them out. Stewards get them back in. We'll store them. We'll keep them safe. But the supporters get to use them to generate a bit of an atmosphere.
Thank you to John for joining me. Thank you for listening. As I said at the start, if you're not a member of the Robins Trust, you can join by going to robinstrust.org/join. It's either £10 a year to be a member, or if you want to help out a bit more, you can be an investor from £5 upwards a month. If you're interested in this and podcasts about Cheltenham Town Football Club, I'm sure you'll be aware of the Robins Report, but if not, here's host Owen Knight to tell you all about it.
Hello, my name's Owen and I'm the host of the Robins Report podcast. Catch us on your podcast platforms as I dissect everything CTFC with guests. We're very proud to be CTFC's longest serving and only weekly podcast dedicated to the Robins. Hope to have you listening soon. Thanks for listening. And as always, up the town.
Go check out the Robins Report. It's fantastic. It's the best way to keep in touch with everything that's going on at the club and to get a range of viewpoints on all the challenges facing us and a good way to bask in the good times when they happen. Thanks again for listening. I'm Jamie, a member of the Robins Trust, and this has been an Unsound production for the Robins Trust.